All right, so each page is a different section. Your test is only on section 2.4, 2.6, and 2.8. So, 2.4, we're writing linear equations. We have two different types of linear equations, slope-intercept form and point-slope form. So what is slope-intercept form?
Y equals mx plus b.
Y equals mx plus b. M is what?
Your slope.
Your slope. And what's b? Y-intercept. So in 33, does it give us our slope?
Yeah.
Yep, so this -2 is our m. Does it give us a y-intercept?
Yes.
What's our y-intercept?
-5.
-5. Anytime we see 0 and a number, that number is our y-intercept. So that's our b. So now we just plug it into our equation. So y is equal to what?
Y equals -2 plus
-2 what? Perfect. -2x minus 5. All we do is plug in our m and plug in our b.
So you take out the plus sign, right?
Right, since it's a -5, we take out the plus. Because it would be like minus -5,
Yeah.
which would just be, or it would be plus -5, but that would be minus 5.
I put a parentheses.
Right, so if you put a parentheses, you had it y is equal to -2x plus -5.
Yeah.
We would just need to simplify this to -5. So you just got to do that one extra step.
Yeah.
All right, 34. Does it give us our slope here?
Yes.
So this 2/3 is our m. Does it give us our intercept? No. So what do we do from here when it doesn't give us our intercept? Put it in point slope form first. So what's point slope form? Perfect. Y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. What is our y1 and what's our x1? What's our x1? And then what's our y1? Perfect. So now we just plug in our x1, y1, and m into our equation. And then we'll have to do some rearranging to get it into slope-intercept form, because that's what it asks for. So we have y minus y1, which is -1. What can we change minus -1 to? A plus. So this becomes y plus 1 is equal to our slope, which is 2/3, times x minus x1, which is 4. So all we did was plug in. I don't know why you guys had the hardest time plugging in on your quiz.
Yeah, I understand.
Plugging in should be the easiest part. Because you guys can have your formula right in front of you. All you need to do is plug in. But here, this is point slope form. We need to get it into slope intercept form. So what do we have to do first?
Y1 minus.
No, 2/3 times x.
Oh.
We need to distribute. So we have y plus 1 is equal to 2/3 x minus 2/3 times 4. How do we multiply 2/3 times 4? Put a 1 under the 4 and just multiply the numerators together and the denominators together. So 2 times 4 is?
8.
And 3 times 1?
3.
Perfect. Now for slope-intercept form, we need it to be y equals. So how do we get rid of that plus 1?
Oh, -1.
Minus 1. So we have to subtract 1 on both sides. So we have y is equal to 2/3x. And then we have to subtract these two together. So we have -8/3 minus 1. What do we need to add or subtract fractions? Perfect. To add or subtract fractions, we need a common denominator. How do you spell common?
COMMON.
So we need a common denominator. How do we get 1 to have a denominator of 3? Multiply the top and the bottom by 3. So this becomes negative 8 over 3 minus 3 over 3. So now we just combine our numerators. So we have negative 8 minus 3. What's that? Negative 11. And what do we get on the bottom? Yep. So we just combine the numerators. And then leave your denominator the same. So our final answer here is y is equal to 2/3 x minus 11/3. So that was 33. Any questions so far?
No.
All right. Or that was 34, so let's look at 35 now. So here we have a line that passes through 2 points. Does it give us our slope? No. So how do we find our slope? Perfect. We need our slope formula. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if it doesn't give you your slope, you have to use this formula. And then we need to name our points. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. It doesn't matter which one's your first point or your second point, but it does matter which one's your x and which one's your y. So remember, the x's always come first. So now we plug it into our formula. So y2 is 8 minus y1, which is 4. So 8 minus 4 on top. And then x2 is 0 minus negative 2 on the bottom. So on top, what's 8 minus 4? 4. On the bottom, what's 0 minus negative 2? 2. This becomes a big plus sign. That minus negative becomes a plus. So then we just have 0 plus 2, which is 2. What can we simplify here? What's 4 over 2? 2. So 4 over 2 simplifies to 2. So our slope is 2. Do we have our y-intercept here?
Yes.
What's our y-intercept? 8. So if we have our slope and our y-intercept, can we plug it into slope-intercept form? Yeah. So what would our equation be? Y equals 2x plus 8. Awesome. Yeah, you just have to simplify, because 2 over 1 is just 2. All right, 37. We need to write an equation of the line passing through each pair of points in point-slope form. So again, this is our point-slope form. So what are the 2 things we need for point-slope form? Right, x1 and y1, so we need a point and slope. 2 things. So awesome, we need to find the slope first. It gives us 2 points here. So we have a point, we need to find the slope. So let's do 37. How do we find the slope? We use this formula here. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We need to name our points. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. And then we plug in. So 9 minus 1 over 4 minus 6. Again, a lot of people on the quiz made mistakes plugging in points for the slope. So you guys have the slope formula in front of you. You can use your notes. So you have this in front of you. All you need to do is label your points, which one's your x1, y1, x2, y2, and plug in. So what's 9 minus 1? And what is 4 minus 6? Can we simplify 8 over negative 2? Negative 4. So our slope is negative 4. So here we have our slope and we have a point. So what do we do now? Plug it in. So we have y minus, what's our y1?
1.
So y minus 1 is equal to, what's our slope? Negative 4. And then in parentheses, x minus, what's our x1? 6. So this is our answer. Leave it like this. It says to leave it in point slope form. So we just leave it in point slope form. A lot of people on the quiz took the extra steps and put this into slope-intercept form. I took it off. I took points off because you left it in the incorrect form. So if it says point slope form, you gotta leave it in point slope form. All right, 38. So we're doing the same thing. What's our x1? What's our y1? What's our x2? And what's our y2? Perfect. So we have our x1, y1, x2, y2. We plug it into our slope formula. Our slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we have 8 minus 2 over 6 minus negative 4. What is 8 minus 2? 6. And then what is 6 minus negative 4? 10. Perfect. This becomes a big plus sign, so it's just 6 plus 4. Can we simplify 6 over 10?
Yeah.
What does it simplify to?
3 over 5.
3 over 5. What do we do next? Plug. Plug it into point slope form. So what's our answer going to be?
Y minus 2 equals 3 over 5. X plus 4.
Perfect. Y minus 2 is equal to 3 over 5 x plus 4. So it's minus a negative 4, so we change it to plus. Perfect. Good job.
Yeah.
All right, we have 2 more from 2.4. So we need to write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line that satisfies each set of conditions. So 39, we have a point, and it's parallel to this line. So what would our slope be here if it's parallel?
What do you call it? I wrote it here, but I don't. Which number is the slope?
Yeah, what number is the slope?
Okay.
4. So remember, parallel
Okay. That's
has the same slope. So we can ignore everything else in this equation and we're just looking at the slope. So our slope is 4. So we have a point and the slope. What are we going to do?
We are going to put it into
Which formula?
y equals mx plus b.
Can we put it into y is equal to mx plus b? What's our b? If we have the point and the slope, we need to put it into point slope. Right now we only have a point and the slope. So we have to put it into point slope form first. Then we can rearrange it. So we have y minus, what's our y1? 2 is equal to our slope, which is 4, times x minus, what's our x1? 1. So this is point slope form. How do we get this into slope-intercept form?
You solve it.
How do we solve?
You distribute.
Distribute. So y minus 2 is equal to 4x minus 4. What do we do next?
You subtract 2 or add 2.
Add 2. So we add 2 on both sides. It cancels out on the left. Y is equal to 4x minus 2. So this is our answer. So number 40. What is our slope going to be here? So perpendicular means that we need to do the opposite reciprocal. So negative what? 3/2. So since it's positive, we make it negative, and then we flip it. So 2/3 becomes negative 3/2. So now we have a point and our slope. So what do we have to do? Plug it into point slope form. So y minus, what's our y1? 5 is equal to negative 3/2 times x minus, what is our x1?
3.
Negative 3. So it becomes a plus 3. Now we need to put it into slope-intercept form. What do we do first? We need to distribute first. Before we can add 5, we have to distribute. So we have y minus 5 is equal to negative 3/2x. What is negative 3/2 times 3? Negative 9/2. Perfect. So remember, we just multiply our numerators together. Multiply the tops and multiply the bottoms. What do we do next? Add 5. So we have y is equal to negative 3/2x, and then we have this negative 9/2 plus 5. So I'm going to do it on the side over here. Negative 9/2 plus 5. How can we add fractions? Same denominator. How do we make 5 have the same denominator? Multiply the top and the bottom by 2. So this becomes 10/2. So now we have negative 9 plus 9/2 plus 10/2. So what do we get when we add these two together? What do we get? 1/2. So plus 1/2. So So this is our final answer here. Y is equal to negative 3 halves x plus 1 over 2. Alright, so on Friday, we did everything from, 2.4. So is there anything you want to see again from 2.4? So you guys are good with slope-intercept form, point-slope form. Make sure you know which formula is which. So if it asks you for slope-intercept form, you have to use your y equals mx plus b. And if it asks you for point slope, it's y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. For parallel and perpendicular, remember if two lines are parallel, that means they have the same slope. If two lines are perpendicular, that means that their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So you just flip it. So if we had 1/2, this would become what? What's that? What is it? -2. Perfect. So we just flip it and make it negative. Or if it was already negative, we would flip it and make it positive. Okay, so everybody's good on 2.4?
Yeah.
So 2.6, we are graphing piecewise functions. Remember in 2.6, we were also graphing absolute value functions, but that's also in 2.8, so I just left it in that section. So let's look at 44. What do we have to do to graph our piecewise functions? So we plug in -1 to x. Remember, for everything, we're going to plug in two numbers. So we're going to plug in a number for x and get a number for y. So in our first part, we plug in -1 first. So we get -2 times -1, which is what? What's -2 times -1? +2. So what's our point here? -1, 2. So going to our graph. That's the whole point of this section, is to graph it. So we go to the left 1 and up 2. Do we put an open or closed circle there? A closed circle. Because remember, less than or greater than, or less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to is a closed circle. So this is a closed circle. What else can we plug in for the first piece? -2. We have to plug in something less than -1. So plug in -2. So we have -2 times -2. What's -2 times -2?
4.
4. So what's our point here? -2, 4. Remember, our point is always our x that we plugged in and our answer, our x and our y. So we go to the left 2 and up 4. Then we can connect our two dots with an arrow. Which direction is our arrow going to go? Left. So we always point it in the direction that our inequality sign is. So we point it to the left. So that's our first piece. Done. 1/3 of the way. Now we move on to our second piece. What are we going to plug in for our second piece? Three, and what else? -1. So we plug in the numbers that it gives us. At -1, are we going to have an open circle or closed circle? What do you think?
Article.
An open circle, and what about at 3? Open circle or closed circle? Open. So both of these points are going to have an open circle. So let's plug in -1. So we have -1 plus 1. What's -1 plus 1? 0. So what's our point here? -1, 0. We plugged in -1, got 0. So we go to the left 1, stay at 0, put an open circle there. Next we plug in 3. So we have 3 plus 1. What's 3 plus 1? 4. So what's our point here? 3, 4. So we go to the right 3 and up 4. Put an open circle here. Do we connect these two dots with a line or with an arrow? With the line. Always in the middle, you just connect the two dots. There's no arrow ever in the middle piece. Ready for the third piece? So we just have x if x is greater than 3. What are we going to plug in first? 3. What do we get when we plug in 3? 3. So our point is 3, 3. Do we have an open circle or closed circle here? Closed circle, since it's greater than or equal to. So we go to the right 3 and up 3, put a closed circle there. What do we plug in next? 4. Anything bigger than 3. What do we get when we plug in 4? 4. So then what's our point? 4, 4. So we go to the right 4, up 4, put a point there. Which direction is our arrow going to go? To the right. We look at our little inequality here. It tells us that we're going to point it in the right direction. So we go through our two dots and to the right. So this is number 44. So 0, oops. All right, let's look at 45 from 2.6. So for our piecewise functions, we just have to take it one piece at a time. So we have -3 if x is less than -1. So what are we plugging in here? -1, perfect. What do we get when we plug in -1? -3. Perfect. So our point would be what? -1, -3. Do we have an open circle or closed circle here? So an open circle. So we're going to go to the left 1 and down 3 and an open circle. What do we plug in next? -2. Anything that is less than -1. What do we get when we plug in -2? -3. So what's our point? -2, -3. So we go to the left 2, down 3. Which direction is our arrow going to point here? To the left. Perfect. So our little arrow goes to the left. So that's our first piece. Now we move on to the second piece. What are we going to plug in here? -1. So we have 4 times -1 minus 3. What is 4 times -1? -4 minus 3. What's -4 minus 3? Perfect, -7. So what's our point here? -1, -7. So we go to the left one, down 7. Do we have an open circle or closed circle here? Closed circle. Remember, it's less than or equal to. So that equal to means it's a closed circle. What do we have to plug in next? 3. So we have 4 times 3 minus 3. What is 4 times 3? 12. And 12 minus 3? 9. So what's our point here? 3, 9. So we go to the right 3 and up 9. Do we put an open circle or closed circle here? Perfect. It's less than or equal to, so it's a closed circle. Do we have an arrow here? Nope, we just connect the 2 dots. Yes? All right, now our third piece, we have x. If x is greater than 3. So what are we going to plug in first here? 3. When we plug in 3, what do we get? 3. So what's our point? 3, 3. So do we have an open circle or closed circle? Open circle. We go to the right 3 and up 3. Put an open circle. What do we plug in next? 4. When we plug in 4, what do we get? 4. So our point would be 4, 4. So we go to the right 4, up 4. Put a point. Which direction is our arrow going to go here? To the right. So that's our piecewise function. So remember, for piecewise functions, you always have to plug in 2 points. For each piece. Any other questions on 2.6? What do we need to do first to plot our line? We need it to be y equals. Perfect. So I'm going to move my 3y to the right side and subtract 6 on both sides. So I have x minus 6. Actually, the best thing to do here, we change our inequality to equals because we're just solving what this line looks like. So we change it to x minus 3y is equal to 6. And then we want this to be y equals. So what can we do to get this to be y equals? Subtract x. So we have negative 3y is equal to negative x plus 6. I always put my x right next to the equal sign. That way it's in that same y is equal to mx plus b. We need y is equal to, so we need to move this negative 3. How do we move it to the other side? Perfect. We divide everything by negative 3. So since y was being multiplied, we do the inverse, so we need to divide. So it cancels out here. So y is equal to, what is negative x divided by negative 3?
Negative 3x.
Right here. How do we simplify this?
3
what would our slope be here? 1 over 3. So we can say 1 over 3x. We could write this as x over 3 or just leave it as 1/3 x. This way we can see what our slope is easier. So 1/3 x. And then what is 6 divided by negative 3?
3. Undivided, 2.
Negative 2. That 3 is negative, so our answer is negative 2. Alright, so now we can graph this line. Where do we cross the or the y-axis at? Negative 2. So we put a point at negative 2. What is our slope? Perfect. So we have our rise is 1 and our run is 3. So we go up 1 and to the right 3. So we put a point there. We can go up 1 and to the right 3 again, put a point there. We can keep going as much as we want. But we really only need 2 dots and then we can connect them. Going back to our question here, we have a less than sign. Is this going to be a solid line or a dotted line? Dotted line. So we connect our points with a dotted line. Now we need a shade. How are we going to figure out where we shade? Plug in 0, 0. So we plug in 0, 0 to the original. We're plugging in 0 for x and 0 for y. 0 minus 3 times 0 is less than 6. So 0 is less than 6. Is this true? Yep. So where are we shading? Above the line. Since 0, 0 was above the line and it's true, we shade above the line. Alright, let's do some from 2.8. So we did 54, so let's look at 55. So here we need to graph our line. Always, so for the first 4, these are going to be lines. And then the second 4 are going to be the absolute value. So what does an absolute value graph look like? Of B. So for lines, we always want our equation to be y is equal to mx plus b. So for 55, we have y is greater than or equal to 2x plus 1. Is this in our slope-intercept form? Yep, so we don't have to rearrange anything. We just leave it like this. So what is our intercept? 1. So we cross the y-axis at 1. So let's draw that on our graph. So we cross at 1, so we put a point there. And what's our slope? 2 or 2 over 1. When we do 2 over 1, we can clearly see our rise over run. So I always like to make it a fraction. So that means we go up 2 and to the right 1. So up 2 to the right 1, we put a point there. We can go up 2 to the right 1 again, put a point there. Once we have 2 or 3 points, we connect them with a line or with a dotted line. So is this line going to be solid or dotted? Perfect. This greater than or equal to means that it is a solid line. Okay, we're not done yet. For all of these inequalities, we have to shade. So anytime you're graphing with less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, greater than or less than, that means we need to shade. So half the problem here is shading. How do we pick which side we're going to shade on? Plug in a point, and we can plug in 0, 0. So when we plug in 0, 0, we plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So we have 0 is greater than or equal to 2 times 0 would just be 0 plus 1, which is 1. So is 0 greater than or equal to 1? Yes or no? No. So no. It doesn't work. So where are we going to shade here? The opposite side that 0, 0 is on. So we're going to shade over here on the left. Any questions on 55? All right, let's look at 56. So we have 2x plus 4y is less than or equal to 12. What do we have to do first here? Put it into y-intercept form. So how would we get this into y-intercept form? Subtract 2x. Perfect. So we have 4y is less than or equal to 2 negative 2x plus 12. What do we do next? Divide by 4. So we have to divide everything by 4. So the 4's cancel out, so we have y is less than or equal to. What is negative 2 divided by 4? How can we simplify that? Negative 1 over 2 x. And then what's 12 divided by 4? 3. So now what's our y-intercept? So we're going to put that point at our y-axis. So we go up 3. Our first point's right there. Now what's our slope? So our slope is negative 1 over 2. So we have rise over run. A negative rise means that we just go down. So we go down 1 and to the right 2. And we can go down 1 and to the right 2. So we have our 3 points there. Are we going to have a solid line or dotted line here? Remember, this less than or equal to means that it is a solid line. Now we need to find out where we're shading. What can we plug in to find where to shade? 0, 0. So we plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. I'm going to plug it into the original problem up here. So we have 0 times 2 times 0, which is 0, plus 4 times 0, which is 0. So on the left, we just get 0. So 0 is less than or equal to 12. Is this true? Yep. So where are we going to shade? Perfect. We shade where that 0, 0 is, so below the line. Okay, we have one more graphing our lines. So 57. So this is y is less than negative 3x minus 5. What do we do first? Is it in slope-intercept form already? Yep, so we don't need to put it into slope-intercept form because it's already there. So we have our intercept, so what's our y-intercept? Awesome, negative 5. And then what is our slope? Negative 3, or negative 3 over 1. So we're going to graph this. Our first point is on the x or the y-axis at negative 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's our first point. Now our slope, we have rise over run. So when we have a negative rise, that means we go down. So we go down 3 and to the right one. Do we connect our dots here with a solid line or dotted line?
I think it's dotted.
With a dotted line. So we don't have an equal to here, so that means that this is a dotted line. So we're going to put our dashed line here. What do we do next?
Oh, this is.
So we plug in 0, 0. We're plugging in 0 for x and 0 for y. So we have 0 is less than 0 minus 5, so just negative 5. Is 0 less than negative 5? No. So where are we shading? So we shade where 0, 0 is not, so on the bottom of this line here. All right, let's do our absolute value ones now. So looking at 58. So we have y is greater than the absolute value of 2x. What's the first thing we have to do for absolute value graphs? Remember, we're going to plug in numbers. How do we find what number we plug in the middle? How do we find what this number is going to be? How do we find what our middle number is going to be? So we set what's inside of our absolute values here. So 2x is equal to 0. Yep, it was 0. So then we solve for x. So here we just need to divide. What's 0 divided by 2? 0. So that means our middle number is what? 0. So you just set what's inside your absolute value equal to 0 to find your middle number. What is going to be our first number we plug in? And then what else? 1. So we just need a number smaller and a number bigger. So now we plug them in. So the absolute value of 2 times negative 1. What's 2 times negative 1? And what's the absolute value of negative 2? Positive 2. So then what's our point here? Negative 1, 2. So we go to the left 1 and up 2. So that's our first point. Next we plug in 0. So we have the absolute value of 2 times 0, which is what? 0. So what's our point? 0, 0. What do we plug in next? So we have 2 times 1, which is just 2. So our point here is 1, 2. So we go to the right 1 and up 2. So we know our graph's going to be in the shape of a V. Do we have a solid V or dotted V? Dotted V. Perfect. So we put our dotted line here. And now we have to decide where we're going to shade. How can we pick where to shade? So what are we going to plug into our equation?
Zero, zero.
Can we plug in 0, 0 here? Right, we can't plug in 0, 0 because our line is on 0, 0, so that wouldn't help us. So we have to plug in something else. Gabby said 0, 1. So we stay on 0, go up 1. So we're plugging in this point now. So we plug in 0 for x and 0 for, or 1 for y. So we have 1 is greater than 0. Is 1 greater than 0? Yes. So where are we going to shade? Inside or V or outside the V? Inside. So the only time you can't plug in 0, 0 is if your line is on 0, 0. So then you just have to plug in any other point. Well, good thing you can use your notes for the test, so you just have to make sure you write it down. So make a little side note. If your line's on 0, 0, you can't plug in 0, 0. All right, any questions on 58? If your line is on 0, 0, you can't plug in 0, 0. So 59, y is greater than or equal to the absolute value of 2x minus 2. So we're going to plug in numbers for x and get values for y. How do we know what we're going to plug in?
2x minus 3 is 0.
Perfect. We set this part equal to 0. So 2x minus 2 is equal to 0. How do we solve for x here? Add 2. So 2x is equal to 2. Now what do we do? Divide. So we divide both sides by 2. What's 2 divided by 2? 1. So our middle number is 1. What's our first number going to be? Zero. And then what's our third number? 2. So let's plug in 0. So we have the absolute value of 2 times 0 minus 2. What's 2 times 0? And what's 0 minus 2? Mm-hmm. So what's the absolute value of negative 2? 2. So then what's our point? 0, 2. So we stay on 0, go up 2. Put a point there. Now we plug in 1. So we have the absolute value of 2 times 1 minus 2. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 minus 2? 0. So what's our point here? 1, 0. So we go to the right one, stay on 0. What do we plug in next? So 2 times 2 minus 2. What's 2 times 2? And what's 4 minus 2? 2. And the absolute value of 2 is 2. So then what's our point here? 2, 2. So go to the right 2, up 2. Do we connect these dots with a solid V or dotted V? Perfect. We have that equal to, so it is a solid V. Now we need a shade. How do we pick where we shade? So here we can plug in 0, 0. So we're plugging in 0 for x and 0 for y. So 0 is greater than or equal to the absolute value of 2, x minus 2. So this is not x, this is 0. So what is 2 times 0? What's 2 times 0? 0. What's 0 minus 2? Negative 2. But what's the absolute value of negative 2? 2. So is 0 greater than or equal to 2? No. So this does not work. So does that mean we're going to shade on the inside or outside? Perfect. Since 0, 0 is on the outside and that did not work, that means we shade on the inside. All right, let's look at 60. So 60 is y plus 3 is less than the absolute value of x plus 1. What do we need to do first here?
X plus 1 equals 0.
X plus 1 is equal to 0. So what do we get for x?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So we're going to plug in negative 1. I'm going to rearrange this equation here by moving the 3 to the other side. So I need to subtract 3 on both sides. That way I have y is less than the absolute value of x plus 1 minus 3. So that way when I plug in my numbers for x, I'm going to get a value for y, and I don't have numbers on both sides of the equation. So all I did was move the 3 over to the other side. So now I'm going to plug in my numbers into this equation up here. What's the first number that I'm going to plug in? What's less than negative 1?
Oh, negative 2.
And what's greater than negative 1?
0.
0. So first thing we're going to plug in is negative 2. So the absolute value of negative 2 plus 1 minus 3. What is negative 2 plus 1? Negative 1. And what's the absolute value of negative 1?
1.
Positive 1. So 1 minus 3 is what?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So what's our point here?
Negative 2, negative 2.
Perfect. Negative 2, negative 2. So let's go to our graph. So we go to the left 2 and down 2. Put a point there. Next we plug in negative 1. So we have the absolute value of negative 1 plus 1 minus 3. What's negative 1 plus 1? And what's 0 minus 3? 0 minus 3. Negative 3. So what's our point here? Negative 1, negative 3. So we go to the left 1 and go down 3. Put a point there. Next we plug in 0. So we have the absolute value of 0 plus 1 minus 3. 0 plus 1 is 1. And what's 1 minus 3?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So what's our point here?
Negative
0, negative 2. So we stay at 0 and go down to negative 2. Sorry, at this point, I put in the wrong place because it was -1, -3. So that should be to the left 1 and down 3. Do we have a solid V here or a dotted V? Dotted. It doesn't have that equal to, so it's dotted. So we're going to connect our dots with a dotted V. And now, how do we pick where we're going to shade? We plug in 0, 0. So we're plugging in 0 for x and 0 for y. So we have 0 plus 3 is less than the absolute value of 0 plus 1. So 3 is less than 1. Is 3 less than 1? No. Doesn't work. So where are we going to shade? Inside the V or outside the V? Outside. Since 0, 0 was inside and it didn't work, we shade outside. Alright, we have one more left, I think. I hope. Yes, one more. So this is 61. So we have 2y is less than or equal to the absolute value of x minus 3. What do we do first here? So we said it's inside of our absolute value equal to 0. So x minus 3 is equal to 0. So what do we get for x? Perfect. We add 3 to both sides, so x is equal to 3. So our middle number is 3. What's our first number going to be? 2. And our third? 4. So we just need a number smaller and a number bigger. For our equation, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. That way we have y is equal to something. That way it helps us when we plug in all 3 of these numbers. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2 just to get that 2 to the other side. So y is less than or equal to the absolute value of x minus 3 over 2. So now when we plug in 2, we have the absolute value of 2 minus 3 over 2. What's 2 minus 3? Negative 1. And what is negative 1, the absolute value of negative 1? What's the absolute value of negative 1? 1. So we get a 1 on top and 2 on the bottom. So 1/2. So what's our point here? 2, 1/2. So don't be afraid when you see fractions. It's just 1/2. So we go to the right 2 and up 1/2. Next we plug in 3. See the absolute value of 3 minus 3 over 2. What is 3 minus 3? 0. What is 0 over 2? What's 0 over 2? 0 divided by 2? 0. Anytime you have 0 on top of your fraction, it's just 0. So then what's our point here? 3, 0. So we go to the right 3 and stay on 0. Next, we're going to plug in 4. So we have the absolute value of 4 minus 3. What's 4 minus 3? 1. So 1 over 2. So what's our point here? 4, 1/2. So we go to the right 4 and up 1/2. Do we have a solid line or dotted line here? solid. So we draw our solid V through our points. Now we need to figure out where we're going to shade. How do we pick a point to shade? 0, 0. So we plug in 0 for y and 0 for x. So 2 times 0 is less than or equal to the opposite value of 0 minus 3. What's 2 times 0? And what is 0 minus 3? Negative 3. So then what's the absolute value of negative 3? 3. So is 0 less than or equal to 3? Yes. So this works. So where are we shading? Outside or inside? Outside. We shade where that 0, 0 is, which is outside.